and professional live stream number 34. I can't believe how many of these we've actually done, but we keep going because there are a good number of you actually who actually quite like these for some reason. I don't quite know why, but no, that's not a problem. Tonight we're going to be talking about rare saloon versions of common hatchback cars. I do apologise that sometimes with the autofocus of this camera, it just kind of goes in and out on this. It is the best quality camera I have for doing the live streams, but it is sort of annoying in that way. So we're going to be having a look at rare saloon versions of common hatchback cars. And good evening to you, Sir Depeche. Hope you're doing very well. Russell Hunter says it'll do fine. Thank you very much indeed, sir. I do appreciate that. Paulie Galtieri says good evening. Good evening, sir. I am just going to be bringing up the live stream on the other computer here. DBT says good evening. I'm glad to enjoy this time. Yes, thank you, sir. Andy G says good evening as well. Good evening to you as well, Sir Andy G's one of longest serving viewers actually. Got a couple who've been around for very, very early days of the channel. And the channel was actually quite different then than it is now. So there we go, just running this. I can't believe I've got to sort of wait for my own adverts to sort of disappear before I can actually look at the stream here, but just the way that it goes sometimes, isn't it? So we'll have here, so I can actually look at the questions that come in. Mark from Bad Books says, good evening, sir. Good evening to you as well, sir. Pop out the chat, here we go. And we have Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV. Good evening to you, sir. Paulie Galtieri is talking about the Volkswagen Vento. We need to go back a bit further than that, actually, sir, to be honest. Vento's really kind of the third generation of, Golf-based saloon cars. We need to go a bit further back than that, actually. Mighty Cat Mods says, good evening. Mr. Parr from Mark on Motoring says, good evening. And so does Chambers 101. Good evening to you all. I hope you have very much enjoyed part one of the slightly shambolic shuffle around classic cars on the key at Christchurch. It was recorded earlier on today. There are two more parts of that coming. So let's start not with the Vento, but actually with the Jetta. Now, as Russell Hunter points out, the first one could actually be said to be the Volkswagen Derby. Now, that was based on the Mark I Polo. I think that ran from 1975 to 1981. I think it came out at the same time as the Polo. It was obviously based on the Audi 50. You just don't see Volkswagen Derbys at all. I've not seen one, I don't think, ever at a show. I have seen Mark I Jettas. Now, the Mark I Jetta is a very relevant car because when I was growing up, not only did my parents sell their Mark I Polo to buy a Jetta because they suddenly had twins and they couldn't fit us all in the car, but they had that car until 1990. It was an 83, like registered March 83, so it was about 3 months after we were born. And the Morris Minor my mother had and the Mark I Polo that my father had just didn't cut it really for carrying a family around. So they bought a Mark I Jetta. It was I think LRV 46Y, and it was green. I think it was a 1.5 CL. Bought it brand new. My grandfather might have helped out actually with that purchase. He often did actually with my parents, and that's the first car I really remember because my parents had it a while. The equivalent of the Derby for the Mark II Polo, I have driven a Mark II Polo on the channel. Mark from Bad Books very kindly provided that for me, which is, I think, July last year I filmed that. So I know what they're like. My father subsequently had another one. I think he bought it summer 1990. Very similar in age to the one I drove, although the Ranger that I drove, that Mark has, that's a much higher spec model than my father's. My father's one was a C. I don't think it's even a CL. So yeah, when we got rid of the Jetta, about January 1990, and bought the Volvo, it wasn't worth lots of money by then. Really, not worth a lot. I think it had done quite high mileage. The Volvo was, again, I think my grandfather helped out with that a bit. A little bit too kind of Tory voting, middle class for my father, who was a socialist, but there we go. Unfortunately, didn't get to enjoy it very much because he died in December 1990, so didn't really get to enjoy it very much. But there we go. So Mark 1 Jetta is very close to my heart. I do see them at shows. In fact, I think I saw one or two actually at Retroids Weekend. That's where I see them. I don't see them outside anything else. They are far, far rarer than the Golfs, like infinitely rarer than a Golf. I don't think they were really like that popular when new, because the Passat was out by then, a Mark II Passat, the B2, I think it was called. I don't know why my parents didn't just buy one of those. You could buy an estate Passat. I don't really know why they decided to buy the Jetta. Probably because they didn't think they needed to go, two sizes up. Just one size up would have done. But yeah, the Golf was a much smaller car back in the day. Mr. Alan Simpson says, good evening. Good evening to you, sir. Trabelli says, good evening, and good evening to everyone. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, there used to be a Derby near my old office. I once stuck a note on it when interested to buy it, but had nothing. I once did that on a Volvo 440 in Southampton, but the chap did actually call me like a year later, but he didn't never follow through with what it was he said, and unfortunately I missed out on that car. Russell says, my parents should have bought a Morris Traveller. The thing is that the Morris Minor was a family heirloom. My grandfather bought that car new in 1958. And in 1970, I mean, 69 or 70, one of the two, my grandfather bought a Wolseley 1100 automatic. It might have been a 1300, one of the two. And he wanted to drive an auto. He only drove autos the rest of his life. He didn't quite like the manuals. So he bought a Wolseley. And my mother inherited the Morris Minor, and she just kept it. I mean, in the 70s, there were just loads of people around who could fix Morris Minors, loads of parts around, very easy car to drive comparatively for the time. At some point we'll have a Morris Minor on the channel. I know exactly which one we're going to have. A friend of mine's actually restoring it at the moment, and I just got to wait. It will happen. I've actually got books on the Morris Minor to use for reference and things on that review. But it's just a little bit old, really. Just a little bit old. For that kind of thing. Alan Simpson points out that, the Passat was larger than the Jetta. Remembers the Santana. The Santana was a 5-cylinder version of the Passat, from what I remember, and of course it went on to live an enormously long afterlife. I think it was until about 2013 in China with about 15 facelifts. Chambers 101 says, I love the old Jetta GTIs. I remember seeing one of the common in the 90s. Jetta GTIs never were as common as the Golf GTIs. I know the ones you mean, the Mark IIs. I really want to have a go in like a Mark 1 and Mark II Jetta. I really want to, but I see them at shows, but I just a question of like getting offered one, really, like everything else that I've mentioned. I actually did a very vague vlog this week on the process of getting cars to review, and the fact is that people don't offer me cars sometimes, but I think I won't want to drive them. But I've driven a lot of stuff you see on the channel, all sorts of things. So, that's sort of a bit of a misnomer. There are some exceptions to what we talk about on this channel, viewers, and you know about one of them very well. Mark on motoring, Mr. Parr. A neighbour had a Mark II Jetta in period and a work colleague, a nice blue one around 2000. A very elegant design. I think that the higher spec and particularly the later Mark IIs do look very nice. That's definitely something that works. Maestro and Montego and Metro Appreciation Club or we do like those, says hello. A good evening to you. Trabelli says the Jetta was cheaper than the Golf used and essentially the same car. Yes, absolutely. Very similar, but more spacious. I think that's one of the reasons why my parents didn't buy a Golf. Because if you're 3 children, that's not going to cut it really. Not enough space in there. But the Jetta, more legroom in the back and a far bigger boot. Trabelli says hit the like button. Yes, the like button really helps actually. If you on any video, if you press the like button, all you have to do is just click it. That really helps it rank a little bit higher. John Ison says, hello, I hope you had all had a good weekend. Yes, thank you, sir. You can see what I've been doing this weekend because results of my labours are already on the channel. Maestro and Montego Metro Appreciation Club says, new car coming soon. You're going to like it very much. If it's something Maestro, Metro, Montego related, then yes, I will like it very much because I just seem to like all of those, obviously with some exceptions. Paulie Galtieri wanted to talk about the Ford Orion and Renault 11 saloon. We can't talk about Renault 11 saloon. It doesn't exist, sir. What you mean is the Renault 9. The Renault 9 actually came out before the 11. Came out in 82, and it was like car of the year. The Orion, yes. I think what essentially happened with the Orion was that they weren't getting the reception they wanted right kind of at the start of the Sierra production about it. People loved the Cortina. The Cortina had been very similar from 1970 to 1982 and just basically, rebodied, then a major facelift. And the Sierra is a very different type of car. Some of the engines were the same, but very different in terms of its construction and everything like that. And there were some people who were sort of put off by the fact that Ford were not offering a saloon car at all. So they brought the Orion out, and I think some bits of that are similar to the Cortina. I think like the rear end's really similar or something. Like the sort of boot floor and things are similar to a Cortina. And actually there is a bit more space in an Orion, and the boot's a lot bigger. And I really like those. I do prefer an Orion to the Mark III and Mark IV Escort. I always have done. A really nice kind of Mark IV Orion gear is a very nice thing, particularly the 1600E. I very much like a 1600E Orion. I have seen those, but yeah, that's pretty good. The Renault 9 is not a car that I have, I think, ever seen one in years. I've seen 11s. I've driven an 11. It wasn't on the channel, but I have driven one. And my grandfather's cousin used to have a Renault 11 Turbo that I used to be terrified in the early 90s, driving on the autoroute in Rouen because he was from Normandy and he used to drive us around in a Renault 11 Turbo. And it was terrifying. He was a little boost gauge sort of doing this and sort of going off the clock. He was weaving in and out of traffic at 90 miles an hour. Bad Book says he test drove a Mark II Jetta 1.6 TX, but I bought a Sierra 1.8 LX instead. Yeah, I suppose they were sort of comparable in a way. Maestro and Montego and Metro Appreciation Club is just confirming that it's a car that he's bought is within the confines of the username, which is good. So we have Mr. Harwood from Rover Joe says, hello, sir. Hello to you, sir. Mr. Andy G says, when I worked for Volkswagen, Jetta was a rare car. Was that the late 90s, sir? Because I think they lost value really, really quickly, and there just weren't too many around. The Golfs were everywhere, but not the Jettas. Trabelli, it's a very good point. The Belmont was rare as well. Yeah, the Belmont... Well, Belmont, I think, in period, wasn't too rare. There were quite a few around. They seemed to sell quite a lot, particularly to the older people who really liked them. In fact, when the family of our childminder replaced their Chevette, but I think I've talked about the Chevette before, they actually bought a Belmont. And I do remember travelling in the Belmont. This would have been early to mid-90s, probably. Yeah, so Belmont is a rare car now. Like, you don't see them. Mark II Astras, you sometimes very occasionally see them. The Belmonts, you don't see them. One of the reasons why is because the Belmont for years was one of the most stolen cars in the country. I think around sort of 2005 to 6, the Mark II Astra and the Belmont were the most stolen cars in the country of all. And I think stealing them didn't really require any effort whatsoever. Nova's also easy to steal. Mark III Escort, easy to steal. Mark II Fiesta, A Series Metro, all that stuff, really easy to steal. And the Belmont's particularly, I don't know why, did the Astra and the Belmont handle so well that they were easy to steal? I don't know. That's something for the comment section below. What have we got here? Maestro and Montego and Metro Appreciation Club. The car that I'm getting has a very posh interior. That's the only clue I'm giving you. Yes, sir. Would it happen to be a Vandalen Plus, sir? Because we like Vandalen Plus very much. Mr. Parr from Marco Motoring says, my father briefly had a Renault 9 between Renault 5s for whatever reason, but he didn't like it. And this is a very good point. In some markets, there was a Renault 7. Yes, you're absolutely right. Renault 7. I think they're built in Spain, which was a Mark 1 Renault 5 saloon. It was. And there was also a saloon version of the Clio. I think it was called Battaglia or the Symbol from memory. But that is right. Mark from Bad Book says, a neighbour's brother-in-law was German, and he drove to Hartlepool every year in a Mark 1 blue Jetta in the late 90s. Very high mileage, very proud of it. Yeah, they're pretty sort of reliable. I mean, they're not that resistant to rust particularly, but yeah, I'll look after them. They're quite, that's the days when they were pretty reliable cars, actually. One of the reasons my parents bought Volkswagens back in the day was because they had terrible experiences with things like a Triumph Toledo and a Mark 1 Ford Cortina and Vauxhall Viva. That was the one that was the worst for them. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trades TV has got enthusiastic about the Mark II Orion 1600E. Yes, sir. We do like one of those with a nice leather interior. Indeed, sir. Mighty Cat Mod says, Grand Place Hartlepool. I spent a lot of time there as a child. I don't think I've ever been to Hartlepool. I've been to places like Middlesbrough, and I've been to Stockton, been up to Saltburn, and of course I used to live in Durham for a few years, so I know those areas, not Hartlepool specifically though. Russell Hollis says Belmont was most of the most stolen cars in the 1990s. It was indeed. Mark from Bad Book says to Mighty Cat Mods, he's born and bred in Hartlepool. Indeed, that's actually where the Polo that I filmed the Centre for Secondhand Classics came from. It was also at Festival Exceptional last year, and it's got the I think Mark's still got the dealer sticker on that. Mr. Harwood says, are you ready for Festival of the Unexceptional next week? I think it's to everyone. Mr. Coleman's getting ready for that. He's bringing the Jeep. I'll be putting some fuel in that for him because it costs a bit to fuel that. Mr. G says, I worked for Volkswagen in the early 90s and the Golfs must have outnumbered Jettas about 10 to 1. Yeah, it's always the way with these hatchback-based saloons. Very popular in places like Poland or Republic of Ireland or something like that, but not so popular here. The interesting thing is that the Rover SD3, the 213, 216, that didn't really have a sort of hatchback equivalent, unless you call it the Maestro. That was a very different car, and those sold really well. Interesting. Paulie Galchieri says, the Orion 1600E was very smart with a wooden dash and door capping. Very good, sir. Yes, indeed. It still had manual rear windows. Unfortunately, yes, sir. It did have manual rear windows. Let's talk more about Mark II Astras. Mr. Parr from Mark on Motoring. My friend is Mark II Astra stolen from work. The car was found dumped a few days later, and the thieves had sorted through his cassette tapes and taken only the good parts. It's back in the day when like music actually cost you something to have rather than just streaming on Spotify. You had to find the tapes. I remember all that sort of stuff. Trabalise says, well, the Escort Gear Saloon 91 a real weapon. Not, sir, the Escort Saloon. Not until September 1993. That was, sir, the Mark III Orion. Russell Hunter says, I always had a soft spot for the Sierra 2000E. Oh, sir, we like the Sierra 2000E, sir. The Sierra Sapphire. Very, very nice. Forbidden Fuel Dan 75 says, hello, I discovered this channel yesterday. I'm afraid, Forbidden Fuel Dan 75, we're going to have to not say your username because we don't talk about diesels on this channel. Party_Pooper says, good evening, sir. Hope you're well. Thank you, sir. Hope you're well too. Mr. Alan Simpson says, the Honda Concerto Saloon was a rarity. Do you know what, sir? I don't think I've ever seen a Honda Concerto Saloon. Ever. Never seen one. Mark Motoring speaking to Mr. Harwood saying, I will be at Festival the Unexceptional with a Megane Coupe. I can pretty much guarantee, sir, that you will be the only Megane Coupe there. Mark from Bad Book says, my car is clean inside and out, waxed and ready for Festival the Unexceptional. Very good, sir. A perfect example to take there. Zach Cog Hayden W says, good evening, sir. We were at Christchurch earlier with our Mark II Granada estate. You certainly were. And I did film that. That's coming up in part 2 of the Slightly Shambolic Shuffle. Part 1 is out now. I'm just editing and rendering part 2. That'll come out tomorrow. And then part 3 will come up on Tuesday. Yes, we do like a nice Mark II Granada. Very nice. Mr. G says, are you drinking milk? I am, sir, but it's not just any milk. This is pink flavoured milk. It's very nice. Yeah, it's very nice indeed. Russell Hunter says, the Nissan Almera and Primera both had saloon versions, which are rare. Yeah, the Almera Saloon is rare, but if you look on the community post I put on the channel, there is one that lives around the corner. Around the corner from me, actually. Primera Saloon, not so rare. Trabelli has very kindly given a super chat donation. Thank you, sir. That's going to help out with the Virginia Festival Exceptional next week. Whether saloon or hatchback, as long as the fuel is not forbidden. That's very good. We've had a very, very good question here from Forbidden Fuel Dan 75. Why is forbidden fuel forbidden? It's forbidden because of government meddling and the Mayor of London and his friends, who basically says we can't talk about it because they've introduced all the ultra emission zones and clean air zones, and it's caused the number of cars with those engines to decline from like 50% of sales at one point to like 5%. So the government says we can't talk about it, therefore I must not. Hoods on Classic says, Simone. Hello, Simone. Nice to have you on the chat with us tonight. I finally caught a live. Excellent. Yes, you have. Finley Plimpton. Good evening to you, sir. Don't worry about it. In fact, you're late. Wayne, who has probably the best Rover 45 V6 in the country, or one of the two best. There is another one out there, but his is very good as well. It's a heavy heart. I'm going to have to sell my 45. I need to fund my daughter's first car. Sad day, but needs must. Yes, I have seen the advert for it, and if you want to see Wayne's car and what it's like, it's in loads of videos. It's in part 1 of the Pride of Longbridge. It's in part 1 of Bromley Pageant. I've got a video from November 2020 or something like that when we compare the two. Sorry, no, September 2020 we compare the two. It's a very, very nice car. That cosmetically, it's a much better than mine. I got loads of these nice upgrades to it as well, which mine doesn't have. Paulie Galtieri says, I think stolen Vauxhalls offered cheap and affordable fun to the joyriders in the 90s. The locks weren't most secure. They were not. The locks were terrible, particularly on the Astras and the Belmonts. They were very bad. Party Pooper says, my brother's Corsa got broken into and they took all his CDs apart from a James Bond compilation. We do like a James Bond compilation on this channel. The finest series of films that's ever been made in the history of cinema. Alan Simpson says the Proton Persona and Wera had 4-door variants of the hatch. They did, yes. The Wera was just the Malaysian market name for the Persona. But I think gradually they worked out that the Persona didn't really have any, so it had to have its name changed, and it did. I think about 2001 they changed it to the Wera. I don't know if the hatch is more common than the saloon. They're both really rare, to be honest, the Wera or Persona. And then the Gen 2 saloon called the Gen 2 Persona. I have actually driven a Gen 2 Persona. It was an LPG version. I drove it in 2012, and I was thinking of buying a Gen 2. But I haven't driven one since. They're not bad to drive. The handling's quite good. Steering's all right. But, yeah. It's just not very great. Like, it's not the best. DBT says the best we don't talk about food and fuel. Yeah, that's good. Paulie Galtieri says we don't talk about them on the channel of Shane Ritchie. Well, there's other things we don't talk about as well, but that's one of them. Russell Hunter says it's not based on a hatch, but has anyone seen a Talbot Tagora? I've only seen one in the 1990s when the former headmaster of my father's school had one, and sometimes we used to go and visit him. His lady wife had a Metro Vanden Pla, and he had a Talbot Tagora, but I have not seen one in real life, I think, since then. Hooked on Classic. I'm afraid I cannot read out your comment because we can't talk about that. Mr. Wallace from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, did you see with Instagram post of Almira's saloon? My wife's friend near identical Almira Saloon Australian studied green and Everton registration. Yes, it must therefore be that those were both Nissan UK registered back in the day, because you wouldn't get that otherwise. Oxford plates on those. Yeah, DBT's making a point to Forbidden Fuel Dan 75. Yeah, there's loads of channels that talk about this stuff. We don't. It's been the case, to be honest, for over 1,000 videos and almost 4 years, right from the very start of the channel. It's not a new thing at all, just in case anybody's wondering. And Forbidden Fuel Dan 75 says, thanks for the information. Yes, that's fine, then. Alan Simpson says, the Lada Samara Saloon. There was a Samara Saloon. There was indeed, yeah. Russell Hunter says, Mitsubishi Charisma also had a saloon version. Yes, it did. I think both pre and post facelift. There were 2 facelifts of the Charisma, actually. Shame it didn't have any. Jonathan Pork Sausage says, I used to know a policeman who, on nights of the 90s, would stop or attempt to stop any Vauxhall with guaranteed results. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not a bad maxim, I suppose. Russell Hunter says, rule 1 of this channel, we don't talk about forbidden fuel. That's the first rule. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, rule 2 is we don't talk about the Prince engine. We certainly don't talk about the Prince engine. It is not good. We cannot talk about it. Paulie Galtieri says the Conway Cruiser. Is that a caravan, sir? Bad Book says to Russell Hunter, it was red Tagora in my paper round of the early 80s. It was huge. Yeah, they were huge. And they had a very weird track because the front track wasn't the same as the back. Like, at the last minute, they had to modify the rear axle and put a Peugeot 505 one in. Alan Simpson says, I used to sell a Proton and the Gen 2 was a frustrating car. it looked and handled brilliantly. It's all right, I suppose. Good stereo and heating. The stereo was all right. It's a Blaupunkt stereo, no? Build quality wasn't great. The Cam Pro engine in those, which was Proton's own engine, was the first engine they built separately from Mitsubishi, and they weren't great. That's all I'd say to that, really. Finley Plimpton says yes to something. I can't remember what it was. I'm sorry, sir. Party Pooper says, my auntie had a lovely white Rover and traded it in under a scrappage scheme and ended up for a Toyota Yaris. Do you think many classics were lost in this way? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. We could talk like for hours about the scrappage scheme and whether it was a good or bad thing, because there's really arguments either way for that. But in terms of just, did we lose a lot of classics in the scrappage scheme? Yes, absolutely, no question. That's why people have those little scrappage scheme survivor stickers. Russell Hunter says Jimmy Hill owned one. Is that a Tagora, do you mean? Scottish car enthusiasts trains TV. That is Mr. Waters. Oh, the Conway Cruiser fold-up caravan that finishes off the suspension. I don't know if Mr. Bill from Fuel Power is on the live stream today. Possibly not, but a very similar thing happened to his Renault Megane Classic at the beginning of the year. That car is hoping to actually be mended, actually. Mr. Coleman's been giving a bit of advice about that, but I wonder if that Berlingo is going to be repaired or will be put in the bin. I don't know. Anyway, I should be talking about anyway because it's got the wrong type of engine. Trabelli makes an extremely good point. We also don't talk about the new professionals. How do I put this? Those of you who weren't aware, the professionals had a continuation series made around 1997. Well, it wasn't broadcast until 1999. It didn't have the original cast members in it. It did have Edward Woodward, and a lot of the same people came and wrote episodes, like Brian Clemens, David Wicks. He was one of the original directors, and he sort of got into that. And one of my friends, called Adrian Irvine, played a part with Spencer in it. But I've actually spoken to Adrian in the past about his time on the New Professionals, and yeah, Spencer doesn't do anything. He's a Shakespearean actor. He's really nice. He's a great chap. He doesn't do anything. Nothing. He's just there. I think that's the main problem. Like, they kind of had some good ingredients. They had some nice nippy cars, Nissan 200SX, that sort of thing, Mondeo ST24s, that kind of stuff. And they don't do anything with them, really. It's one of the most wasted opportunities I've ever seen on television. Absolutely, utterly appalling. The American-made episodes of the New Professionals are some of the most boring things you could possibly watch on television in the 90s. It's far worse than the fourth series of Bugs. Far worse. That's a bit of a rant, wasn't it? Yes. I like to rant about the fourth series of Bugs and New Professionals. So don't ask me about those again, because we will rant. Yeah. Mr. Alan Simpson. Not a huge car, but the Mazda 121, the one presumably that looked like an Austin A35, was a great quirky saloon. I don't know what that was based on, though. I don't know if it was just kind of like its own thing. In that case, it's not based on an actual hatchback, because it replaced the sort of Kia Pride type 121. So it's a good shout, sir, but I'm not sure that actually counts. Russell says yes. Can't remember what it was in reference to, sir. Sherpathan03 says, there's a document on the government website that lists every single car lost to the scrappage scheme. Makes this an interesting, grim reading. At some point, we're going to do this live stream where I read that document, aren't I? That's what we're going to have to do. Paulie Galtieri says, that's sorry for Bella the Belingo, but we can't talk about. I don't know whether that trailer tent thing was Ian Seabrook's idea or his lady friends. Either way, it doesn't matter because they're both really nice people. I've met both of them. Really nice. It's just, yeah, a shame. Simone from Brooklyn Closet says, The New Professionals was terrible. Yes, The New Professionals was terrible. The original, brilliant. One of the best 2 or 3 series ever. The New Professionals, not good. Freddie Pritchard says, the Belingo's going to be fixed. Okay, yeah. Well, Mr. Bills McGann's going to be fixed, and that's... I've driven that car, actually, on my channel. If you want to see no-budget reviews running around the McGann Classics, you can have a look at it, but that's going to be fixed, apparently. I'm not surprised that Belingo's being fixed, to be honest. Russell Hunter says, Citroen made a booted 2CV called a Citroenetta. I've heard of this. I'm not sure if I've seen one, to be honest. Yeah. Chambers 101 says, do you remember Spender catching Crims in a Jeep with his Range Rover? I thought Spender drove a Sierra Cosworth. Maybe I'm wrong. Paulie Galtieri says, we don't talk about the Shane Ritchie Minder series either. Oh, of course. I'm glad that series was made in 2009 because I don't have to cover it on Cars on Television and Film. Mark Passard says, good evening, sir. I wonder if you think that the ultra emission zones might be scaled back due to the cost of living crisis so many are going through. Absolutely not. They're not going to do that. It would be great if they did, but they're not going to do it because it's politically so wonderful for so many people. They're not going to do anything about that, I'm afraid. Russell Hunter says, the Ray Daly series of Minder, there was, I think, was it one or more of those? Wasn't much cop either. I have seen it. It's all right. I mean, the thing is, I've watched The New Professionals and the 4th series of Bugs. So, in terms of, like, stuff in the 90s that's not very good, that's actually not too bad. But, yeah, anyway. Mighty Cat Mods, this is confession time on here tonight. Can I confess to not liking Belingos? I mean, you can. I mean, the response of the other people in the live stream, I can't be held responsible for. But, I mean, you can. I've driven... the only one I've ever driven of those was the Peugeot e-Rifter that I was one of the first people in the country to drive one on YouTube, and I've found virtually no views on that, which I find really strange. But there we go. Yeah, I haven't driven. I don't know. I tell a lie. I've driven a petrol Peugeot partner van with an LPG conversion in about 2018. So I have driven one. Yeah, it was all right. I suppose. Lots and lots of body roll. Trabelli says, the Ambassador and the Ital were a wasted opportunity. I think basically they didn't have enough money to get the Maestro and Montego launched. And so they had to sort of stall for time. And they had to introduce the Ital and the Ambassador to help them out. I think that's all it was. The Ambassador reception of that was only in Britain because it never got exported to anywhere else. PS Cavalier 95 says, my Peugeot 306 1.8 sedan had a rear wiper. Yes, indeed. There's a green Peugeot 306 sedan that goes to a thing called the Pop and Fly-In show in May every year. I always see it there, and I want it. It's amazing. It's not the top spec one, but it's got Peugeot fleet plates on it as well. Simone from Hoods on Classics is very kindly just give a like button. That's very kind of you, Simone. Thank you very much. It does very much help anybody who's doing a live stream in particular. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trainers TV says, he's forgotten about the Peugeot 306 sedan. Well, we just reminded you, sir, and I want one. Russell Hunter is being spoken to by Trabilly. I think this is about Spender. It was watchable, and there was a 3 series. I think. Oh no, sorry. That's about Ray Daly Minder. Okay. Yeah. This. Yeah. He says, I confess to not liking any BMWs apart from the M1. The M1's quite different. Wasn't that made by Lamborghini or something? Paulie Galtieri says the Renault Megane Classic had a bigger boot than the Scorpio. Yeah, I suppose it did actually. It's a massive boot now. You can hide multiple bodies if Mr. Richardson's watching in there. Sir Depeche Mode says, are you very excited about the MG4 electric, sir? I'm very excited, Sir Depeche, about not just the MG4, but the facelifted MG5, which are apparently being launched at the same time, sir. We must calm ourselves down most slightly about that. Russell Hunter says the Ambassador didn't really spoil us. No, it didn't, because you couldn't get the E-Series 6-cylinder in it. You could not get a rev counter in it. It's pathetic, isn't it? It's pathetic. You couldn't even get a beige leather interior. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, the Escort Saloon or Focus Saloon, you don't see much of either. The Focus Saloons I do see around, to be honest. I do see those. Not, however, the Escort Saloon. Absolutely not. You don't see those. Mark on Motoring says, here, let's just close this, hold on. Mark on Motoring says, I haven't seen a 306 sedan for years. Yeah, the only one I see is the one at that show in Popham. Paulie Galtieri says, the Austin Ambassador Vanden Pla could have been great, but it fell short of being all luxury. Yes, it did, sir, but we didn't get a rev counter, and we didn't get a beige leather interior. Excuse me. Bad Book says, you don't see Saloon Mondeo and Mark 3s, and Mark 4 saloons are quite rare. Yeah, they're both rare. I mean, have you seen a Mark 5 Mondeo saloon? That's interesting. I've seen those, actually. Sherpa Fan 03 says, I see more Mark 1 Focus saloons than Mark 2 Focus saloons. Yeah, by the time that the Mark 2 Focus saloon was launched, people just weren't buying them. The rarest of all is a facelift Mark II Focus saloon. I've never seen one. There's a Focus saloon that lives just around the corner here. It's a pre-facelift. I think it's 2005, so it's first year of production. I see that, but I don't see the facelifted Mark IIs. Soda Pesh Mode says, I think the facelifted MG5 looks quite similar to the MG forward front. Yeah, it's not a surprise if they're bringing them out at the same time, is it? Andy G says, how long before you say we can't talk about petrol on this channel? I doubt that's going to happen, sir. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast Trains TV says, I see Mark 1 Focus saloons on eBay, and I think about dropping an RS engine into them. Yes, it's possible. Sir Depeche Mode is telling me to calm down. How can I calm down, sir, when electric MGs are some of the most popular content on my entire channel? Graham Taylor says, ooh, I think we're going to have to be careful about what we see. Let's say here. I bought a 306 sedan powered by an engine which had a fuel source of pixie dust. There we go. After my Montego, loved it. There we go. Yes, we can talk about pixie dust instead, and that's good. Right, do we have any more questions or comments to say before we end this evening? Oh, right, here we go. This is a good point. It took Ford 5 years to make a Mark III Granada saloon. That's right, it did. Mark III Granada launched early 85, and the saloon came out in 1990. That's quite right. The 800 and the Carlton had saloons from 86. They certainly did. Sir Depeche Mode is now having a quizzical expression. Yeah, Simone Pinton Classics is not a big fan of the Mark I Fergus. I mean, very much more. Graham Taylor, I think we've got a problem. Got a problem here because we can't talk about that Montego, can we? We can't talk about that. Paulie Galtieri, which one are you referring to about electric rear windows, sir? Mr. G says, when will you do another live with Mr. Coleman? We will be doing another live, sir, with Mr. Coleman. Next weekend, actually. After we get back from Festival Exception, we'll do one of those. I'm sure you'll enjoy that because everyone seems to. Mighty Catmod says, we didn't really discuss Volkswagen Ventos. They're rare in this country. Volkswagen Ventos are quite rare. They weren't a massive seller. You could get really nice ones. I think you could get one with a VR6 engine, actually, as far as I know. I don't think I've seen one for years, but yeah. Mark Passad says, given someone produced a little, it's a piece of paper stuck to a window saying it's a beige leather interior, latest stuff. What about a sticker? Or saying it's not a beige leather interior. The thing is that it costs money to order that kind of stuff. And once I've got rid of the final original run T-shirt from April 2021, I will order some new merchandise. I'm just waiting for that last T-shirt to sell. I think it's a double XL. And then I'll order some new ones and some new stickers and stuff. But I'm trying to get rid of the stuff I've already got rather than ordering new ones. And yes, it's definitely on the cards, that kind of thing. Russell Hunter says, didn't the Americans get a Buick Fiesta? They did, yes. And some of the Fiesta were really basic, actually, in America as well. You're talking about the Mark 7 Fiesta, would be that one. Simone enjoyed the chat with Mr. Coleman. Yes, the chats with Mr. Coleman are always very informative and entertaining. Mr. Watson from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Traders TV says, yes, there was an American saloon Fiesta. I think the American Air Force used them. Yeah, quite possibly. Even the staff cars, they're very cheap. Probably just some like 1.6 engine. I don't remember actually. It's a while since I've actually looked into the American Fiesta saloons. Paulie Galtieri says the Ventos were very popular in the Republic of Ireland in the mid-1990s. Still a few out there. Yeah, Ireland for some reason really likes these kind of hatchback-based saloons. I don't know why. So yes. Mighty Catmod says there are 3 Vento GLXs within a mile of here. Wow, that's like probably saying there were some Rover 400s or something, I suppose. It's in Germany. Yeah, that's might be not surprising. Soda Pesh says it's called past your bedtime. It's not, sir. Is it past yours? We will continue a little bit longer. Not much longer though. Anvil Tech says currently working in the Southern Ireland. There are lots of old 90s cars. Are 90s cars more expensive or something than they are here? I think I remember saying that yeah, that cars were far more expensive in the Republic of Ireland than here. I think that's the case. Certainly in Northern Ireland, cars are much more expensive. Sherpa3 says, I've been eyeing a late 90s Cadillac Seville SDS as my next car. Yes, they did sell those over here. They were sold officially in Vauxhall dealerships back in the day. I think so. And some had beige leather interiors. Yes, you could. You could get one with a beige leather interior. It's on Classics. Simone, did you enjoy the Gaydon show? Yeah, it was very hot that day. I got quite nasty sunburn, but yes, we filmed 7 parts on that day. BBC show. It's all on the channel. If you have problems sleeping at night. Mr. Harwood says, do you want to review my 25? Yes, please, sir. Of course I do. Mark from Bad Book says, I liked the cookery program you did. Yes, Alex from Alex's Assets and I I think it was at the start of this week. Yes, it was. We recorded a video where we tried to fry an egg on top of a Nissan Micra, and then we actually then fried it on the dash. It kind of worked. That was crazy. Sir Depeche Mode says, "Oh, catty, you a cat now, are you, sir?" Mr. Coleman is on the chat. He's watching from bed. Good evening, Mr. Coleman. Sir Depeche has definitely become a cat because he's saying meow. Simone is referring to the Nissan Microwave. Terrible joke. There actually was a special edition Micra in 1994 called the Nissan Microwave, which was the sister car to the Nissan Sunny Spray. Krillin winning. Have you heard of the new 2023 Ram ProMaster? No, I'm afraid not, sir. Sir Depeche Mode is a very restaurant. Not really, sir. You're the one who's making fun of me. Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, "Evening, Mr. Coleman. Are you doing very well? You might have fallen asleep, sir. He is quite a busy boy these days." Russell Hunter says, "Just notice the use of Roman numerals. It's classy." We do use a lot of Roman numerals on this channel. It's probably due to the old public school background. Graham Taylor said, "I had a Triumph Acclaim and a Rover 213 with your preference of fuel." Well, those cars weren't even actually available with forbidden fuel engines. That's right. Don't cry, Sir Depeche. Right. Is that all we have for tonight? Because we have been going for 52 minutes. And so I think that might be enough before Sir Depeche gets too upset. So, right. That'll be it then. Thank you very much indeed once again for watching. Well, I think you're the short-tempered one, to be honest, sir, because you keep sort of writing nasty things. So we'll be finishing because you say it's my bedtime. So thank you very much indeed once again for watching this slightly less professional live stream number 34. Thank you to Sir Depeche for providing entertainment for us all, which he always does, because he's a resident channel celebrity. And we will see you all very soon. Thank you.